Signs of the Southland, Monday, Memorial Day, May 30th, 2022. Mr. Purdy, I understand that you have a fun little game for us to break the ice with today.
I do. We have a good leadoff game here. So I spent part of my afternoon just because I never bothered doing this before, of like seeing in the entire NCAA cycle, the 2021 seasons through end of 2022, like how many sports are there even, and then who all's winning these things? Like, is it, because I know we always knew Stanford is like good at basically everything half the time, but
they are.
Where is this clumping? My fun discoveries was that bowling is a sport that is, you can win a national championship in, that McKendree won. Did not know this was a school.
Like the E1?
McKendree, whoever they are, won the team bowling thing. Men's ice hockey, of course, Denver won, but like Denver, they don't get much of anything. They barely winning anything. Men's volleyball went to Hawaii, so the Watkins got a title in there, which is fun. Men's cross country went to Northern Arizona, another odd one. And then there's all the ones we do, like Wisconsin won women's volleyball. Cal's got 2 between men's swimming and water polo. So if it's water, they kind of got that. But the game I wanted to play though was how many could Texas win? Right now, they have 2. They've got rowing and they've got men's indoor track and field. But they could win up to how many more do y'all think? So you can kind of take into account what sports are left. But they have an upper bound, which is obnoxiously large to me.
I think that list might be out of date because I think they picked up the team tennis.
Oh, they win a tennis one?
On one side. On one, I forget which side, but they won it on one side. But
Texas.
Yeah, Texas.
Oh, I may have missed tennis.
Well, it's 3. It doesn't matter in the large scheme of things, but it's just one more.
I was going to say, I think they could probably win.
There are not that many left. They are in the NCAA baseball field, which we'll talk about.
Yeah, they did win men's doubles tennis. So they're at 3 if you count doubles as a team.
Okay.
It's not like the team title though. It's just
right. Yeah. I didn't really count that because it's all individual. They don't have like
okay.
They don't have like a points thing or anything like that.
Good adjustment. So they're in the men's. They're in this baseball regional. They're hosting their own regional. We'll talk about the regionals in a second. I think they advanced in softball, so they're in the Women's College World Series.
Correct.
That's at least 2 more. They have
probably potentially outdoor track, right?
Yeah, outdoor track is on the table.
Mm-hmm.
Tennis is done. Look, they don't play lacrosse. Lacrosse finished up today. What other winter sports are there, or spring sports are there?
They are still. So this kind of jumps the gun on golf, but they are still eligible.
Oh, right, golf. They will have made the field of 8.
Yes. So that puts them at 2. Stanford has 3 at the moment, but they are not going to win anything else. They're done at 3. Texas is top ranked in both track and field for men's and women's, so they could they could sweep in Eugene, and then all the other ones they mentioned, which means they could finish this with 7.
I think that actually might not be enough to win them the Directors Cup or the Capital One Cup, whatever the hell it's called. You would be surprised who's in the lead for both of those.
UNC.
Now, Texas is 4th right now in men's golf, which they're only 8 shots back. So,
but it goes to match play tomorrow, so that means strokes don't really matter anymore. It's just
that's true. Yeah.
Okay. Here's the top 5 on the women's side for the Capital One Cup. Florida State at 72, Stanford at 65, Wisconsin at 64, South Carolina at 63, and Louisville at 61. On the men's side, he who shall not be named at 66 at number 1, Michigan at number 2 at 62. Clemson and Kansas tied for 3rd at 60. Oh, and North Dakota State tied for 3rd at 60. What? That's Capital One Cup. I think that's different from Directors Cup.
Okay.
Isn't the Capital One Cup that like bowl thing where they like give it to like the conference that gets the most bowl?
Yeah.
Some like dumb thing like that. Okay.
It has like 4.5 men's. They got more than 4.5, but you know,
okay.
Like,
I was trying to get the Directors Cup standings here.
I'll mention the other teams that could win either already at multiple or could get to a second one. Georgia's second ranked in men's track and field, so they could get that. Florida's fourth in both men's and women's track and field, and also in softball and baseball. Oklahoma is currently leading the men's golf and the team portion until stroke play, of course, or match play. Then because there's so many baseball teams left, Stanford, Maryland, Notre Dame, Virginia, Florida State, and Oklahoma or other schools. And then Northwestern could be a sneaky win too. They also won. What was the thing they won? They also won field hockey this year.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have the Director's Cup pulled up. This is as of the beginning of May. So it doesn't include a bunch of championships, but this is the gospel that we have to go with. Michigan is on top, followed by Stanford, Ohio State, Notre Dame, North Carolina, and then Texas at number 6. So, oh boy, that is a tough field to break into at the top of the
tough field, but they've got a lot of upside.
If I'm reading this correctly, Tech is at 86th. So that is lower than we've been.
To be fair, we have like 2 fall sports. So like,
yeah, we have the fewest. We have like the ACC minimum. So let's not put that cart before the horse. But yeah, Director's Cup, Capital One Cup, fun stuff to look at. However, still kind of to look at, I will say. And that is as of May 9th. So that's missing at least lacrosse. I think maybe hockey. That should be after hockey. It's missing a bunch. Yeah, it's missing a ton. So
yeah.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. Let's start on the Georgia Tech Sports Review, talking about the aforementioned baseball NCAA tournament. I want to start with how Tech's regular season or their pre-NCAA season ended. They were effectively eliminated on day one of the ACC tournament, by Pitt in I think it was like an 8-6 comeback win for Pitt in the first game of the first day of the tournament. Not a great showing. Tech did come back and beat Louisville on day 3. So there is that. Pitt went pretty far in the tournament. I think they made the semifinals before getting the snot beat out of them by NC State, who in turn got the snot beat out of them by UNC in championship game. Before we move on to talk about Tech's NCAA tournament draw, do either of you have any thoughts on the ACC tournament? Jack, let's start with you.
I kind of want to ask y'all, how much do we think the Louisville win matters? Like, was that going to get us out of where we are now? Or do we think that would have put us somewhere else geographically in terms of where we were, like, would that put us in a 2 seed in Statesboro? Does that put us in a 2 seed? Does Gainesville have one, or am I making that? I'm making that
Gainesville
up.
Gainesville has one. It's questionable at how much they deserve to host, in my humble opinion, but that's for a different podcast, probably.
I don't think it had an effect. I think if Tech was in a more precarious position with regards to tournament entry, I think it would have had more of an effect. But I think Tech's RPI was already high enough that you're looking at just adding on to what is a pretty solid resume. We'll talk about the caveats with that, but a solid tournament resume already, rather than putting it over the hump, so to speak.
So I'm gonna flavor that. So if you think about it, in theory, Tennessee being the consensus number 1 pick, that would make the 2 seed in that region the 32nd best team overall. That'd make the 3 seed the 33rd. It'd make the 4th seed the last team in the tournament, the 64th team. The MEAC winner, Coppin State, as delightful. I'm sure they had a wonderful year. MEAC, it has been at the bottom of every single one of the projections I've run, of general consensus of RPI, all that good stuff. Not a surprise there. But if by that logic, if it holds, which I would argue it doesn't, because the baseball and softball regional selection process is a bunch of voodoo nonsense that gets packaged up into 16 14 blocks, right?
Yeah.
And with that logic, that makes Tech, if logic applies, and I'm not saying it does, that makes Tech the 32nd best team overall, and arguably beating Louisville then hurt us because it put us from being the 3rd seed in someone else's regional, Statesboro, Auburn,
yes,
wherever, into the Knoxville regional. That being said, geography, I'll put up in air quotes because they use that pretty loosely, as we saw in Wisconsin and in Gainesville and all that good stuff. But they use geography and relative weighting and all this nonsense that is just basically them trying to put an objective stamp on a subjective process in a way that, like, the part of the reason that projecting this field is impossible is because there's not, like, even though the committee can say in some years, like, we are going by RPI, we went by RPI, they don't do that, right? Or they can say, hey, like, big wins matter. I'm not entirely convinced that they always do, right?
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Georgia Tech, in some ways we might be the 32nd best team overall. But I'm not convinced that, especially with how we saw the ACC get treated this year. Granted, nine teams in is a lot, right? But like versus the SEC, which got a questionable Ole Miss, who is decidedly worse than NC State, an obvious snub we'll talk about in a little bit. Like, there's just too much that's just left to chance or left to opinion in this selection process for me to be like, this is great. I love doing this every year. Because what did we say last year? The one team that they're going to seed us against and that we match up terribly against is Vanderbilt. Where did we go? Nashville.
Vanderbilt. Yeah.
Consensus number 1 overall team versus, we were filling out that bracket. Oh yeah, let's put a solid, like, mid-tier ACC team there. Like, it just doesn't, I don't know. I wish I could be in the room where it happened. I'm sure everyone says that about every sport, but I mean, not that we got the disaster scenario, but we're going up against the team of destiny, and it's hard to beat the team of destiny twice.
Yeah. Let's go over the regional field just 1 second. Like Jake said, Tech will be headed to the Knoxville regional as the 2 seed. The 1 seed obviously is Tennessee. They are also the 1 national seed. So you can, so that kind of contextualizes our prognostication, if you will. The 2 is obviously Tech. 3 are the Campbell Camels, and the 4 are the Alabama State Hornets. Tech will be facing Campbell in game 1 of the regional Friday on the 3rd of June. That is a noon kick on ESPN Plus. I think I agree with you guys when you're saying Tech, given its reputation this season, given its RPI and all that stuff, and given its big wins, it should have gotten a better matchup. Maybe not a better seed, but a better matchup. However, my stance on this, and I put a tweet out from the Rumble Seat account earlier today, they didn't play well enough when it mattered in order to earn that benefit of the doubt or that prioritization in terms of matchup, right? They are on paper, the 32 overall seed based on the rankings for a reason. And that's because they oscillated between really good seed playing Miami, number 3 Miami, and winning that series, and really bad seed allowing a football score to Wake Forest. So
yeah,
it's hard for me to seriously invest time in the Tech got screwed sort of debate when statistically, data wise, et cetera, or not even data wise, just like eye test wise, this team did not play up to the level that it had talent.
Yeah. The eye test was infuriating at points for sure.
Absolutely.
Like, there was some of those where you just like couldn't believe that's like, this team looks literally unbeatable. And then you got like the Wake Forest game, which is like, how this is a college baseball team.
And they dropped and I think one of the things is that the committee really emphasized non-conference strength of schedule when putting these together. And that was a common refrain on Twitter, and that was a common refrain during the selection show.
I don't think that you can knock Tech for having a bad non-conference strength of schedule.
I wasn't going to go there. Like I wasn't going to knock them for it.
Like you can knock UVA and honestly NC State. Like yes, they played ECU, but like other than that, I don't know.
I had a point that I was coming around the bend to.
I'm not just gonna like kneecap you here, but like we had a damn good we had a damn good non-conference strength of schedule, and it's frustrating.
I wasn't gonna knock Tech for the strength of schedule. What I was gonna say is Tech had a very high non-conference strength of schedule, but did not do well with that high non-conference strength of schedule, which is part of the problem, like part of the reason we're discussing this, because every team in state was fantastic, right? Kennesaw is in the field. Georgia Southern is in the field. I think Georgia
Southern's hosting.
Georgia Southern's hosting a regional.
It's a whole nother crock as well that Southern is hosting. Notre Dame has to go all the way down to Statesboro when Notre Dame should darn well host too. I don't know. It's just I get more steamed about the baseball selection than I think I do
the actual baseball.
No, I'd say more than the men's basketball draw, more than softball, more than volleyball, more than the women's basketball draw. It's always baseball. Like, I don't know if it's because it's a bunch of like old boys network or politics or what. I just feel like every year I wind up just like, all right, who got screwed this time? Because I know it's coming.
I think part of the reason here is, and part of the confusion, and I was seeing this on Discord a little bit, is you have a bunch of teams that are unable to do RPI padding early in the season because they play in the North, right? And so even if you go straight on RPI, you have a half of the nation, depending on how baseball programs are distributed, assuming half of the nation that is completely screwed when it comes to early season matchups and early season RPI padding, because they just can't functionally do it because of the way that the weather, because of literal weather patterns. So they play 6 weeks in the South. They either do their midweeks, their non-con, or just get shellacked by better teams that are in the South, or they play really soft schedules in the South, and then they go back up north, and then they have this whole Ouroboros situation in their own conference. And that's one of the reasons why you only saw the Big Ten put 2 teams into this field.
I sigh. I mean, Rutgers probably had a shot, but if Rutgers didn't make it, like, there's no way Michigan was going to make it if they didn't win the dang conference.
Right.
That's also a good point. It's a one bid league in baseball. That's insane. It's absolutely insane. And I think
it's very funny. Let's be clear. It's very funny.
But also at the same time, it's not like Notre Dame is Notre Dame's further north than Illinois, but they get to play in the ACC. They play a great conference. Pitt, in this case, maybe this is a case where, that's a borderline team and they got screwed a little bit. Maybe they beat, NC State or, North Carolina and get a couple. I mean, obviously if they beat North Carolina, they're in, but it just seems like it's tough. I like being in a conference with great baseball, but it also kills me that like half the field is the ACC and the SEC. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There's so many, we talked about this with golf too, how it's just a bunch of half the teams were Southeast depending on your qualification of what Southeast means and what state is what and whatnot. So, but again, same thing, like on the flip side, like hockey has this too. Like there's outside of like those random Alabama schools, like no one's playing D1 hockey at all from the southern, we're just missing out on those other sports. And so at least there we just know to not try, but still.
Can I flavor that just a little bit?
Flavor it away.
That not try is the key though, right? Like,
yeah, it's true. No, yeah.
I'm not fielding a hockey team, so I'm not sad we get left out. It's got to be a much bigger bummer to be Michigan State and know that like you play in a power conference, but like it doesn't even matter.
Right. Yeah. The Big Ten's in that weird quandary where they can service all the sports and geographically just barely pull it off, depending how snowy it is at any given point.
But it works in softball. That's the thing I don't get. Like they had 7 teams in the field in softball this year.
Yeah. Yeah, they did.
Something's going on there.
Well, so I did do a little bit of the deep dive of how our pod did against other tournament teams. Campbell played at 11 games against the tournament teams. They were 3-8. Tennessee was 20-3. Alabama State was 0-2, and Georgia Tech was 16-10. Of course, a lot of those going against ACC schools.
Yeah.
I did this by hand, so I may be off by a game or two. But still, so that part surprised me though, that like despite all this, against the tournament teams, we actually were better than I probably would have guessed, considering just how many times we had disappointing losses.
Yeah.
But also that also shows a number of them were disappointing in the sense because we shouldn't have lost those games.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a competitive regional, right?
Yeah.
Like those two teams, Tennessee and Tech, make this a really compelling watch to the point where you think it's going to come down to the final game again, like it did last year. It could totally come down to the final game last year. But let's talk about these teams a little bit more. I don't know how much prep that either of you did for Alabama State in particular, but the comment that I got from our expert on college baseball was, and I quote, "Alabama State might be the worst team in the tournament," which by seeding, literally yes, but also
yeah, they would. They'd be 64.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You talked a little bit about Campbell's record versus tournament teams. They also have a pretty good ace on their staff.
I was scared when I looked up his stats. I just went to their roster. I was like, all right, who seems to be their ace? And it was immediate. You could tell exactly who it was as soon as you looked at their stats.
Let me put this on for size. He's got a 2.21 ERA. Pitcher wins are fake, but he's got 11 of them. 0.89 WHIP, 1 home run allowed, which I think is the big key here.
That was the big one for me. I was like, oh God, that's okay.
So it sounds like he's not allowing a lot of contact in general, and especially not a lot of hard contact. Opponents are hitting 195 against him. He's only had 16 walks all season. I think Tech has had 16 walks in multiple games this year, 14 appearances. So, a little bit of a sample size, but final, he's got 6.8 strikeouts per walk. So really, really good performances out of this guy. I wish I knew his name and had it written down. All I have
it is Thomas Harrington.
Thomas Harrington. However, this all comes with the more contextual caveat in terms of tournament performance, that he has had his worst starts of the season in his most recent starts, allowing 10 earned runs, only 8 Ks, and those are against worse lineups. So keep that in mind as we go into this game one. Like I said, that's the first game of the regional, noon kick on Friday. Tennessee, number 1 national seed. We talked about that already. They're I didn't watch all of the SEC championship game, but if I remember correctly, they are the SEC champ. They are 53-7. That schedule sheet has so much blood on it. Team of Destiny might be very, very accurate for this. They are just an unstoppable force, both on the mound and at the plate. And it's very scary that we are in the same region as them. And we already discussed how that is just a very bad draw. Jake, I want to kick it over to you. Thinking about this regional as a whole, what do you make of? I guess we talked a lot about its composition, but what do you make of these other two teams? Right, we talked about Tennessee being really good. We talked about Tech being What do you make of Campbell and Alabama State in this region?
Campbell scares me, honestly. I know that's probably the obvious one to take off the shelf, but they've just had such a solid year. I mean, it's a team that's hung with Power 5 teams. It's a team that's hung with basically, I mean, they won their conference. Obviously, that's great. And the thing isn't just that they're a solid team, it's that they have that star talent, and that star talent is the exact thing that can neutralize a Georgia Tech. And we're gonna run into him. They're not gonna save him for game 2. If you can't get through game 1, it doesn't matter. So yeah, that's pretty
pretty nerve wracking. I think I'm the obvious plan of attack is get the bats around early, but if that doesn't happen, you got to keep runs off the board. In terms of Alabama State, though, I think my numbers have them as the second worst team in the tournament, but it's behind it's in front of the MEAC team, so like that's kind of what happens at that point. Like it's just how it goes. I don't know. I'm definitely not that scared of Alabama State. And if we struggle with them, it's because we're playing with them either after having already lost to Campbell or having already lost to Tennessee. So at that point, you're in deep water anyways. And I mean, Tennessee's success has been bandied about by people who are much more in tune with the SEC than I am. But even I, as an ACC fellow, I respect the Vols, if you will. Talking about the Vols.
Yikes. Jack, over to you. What do you think the success criteria is for Tech, given this matchup and given the strength of Tennessee? What is a success in this regional?
I wrote out a whole prediction. My guess was we'd lose to Harrington, lose to Campbell, which is I don't think is awful because he's done after that first game. So if you run into Campbell again, you're either getting him on super short rest or that's it. My guess was lose to Campbell, beat Alabama State, beat Campbell in that third game, and then lose to Tennessee. That was my roadmap of what I think will happen. Do I find that to be successful? I do it like this because it seems to match how bipolar this team could be in terms of absolutely destroying teams and then losing a bad game there as well. So I think I would like, if we beat Tennessee at least one time, as we did with Vandy, I would still find that successful. Like if we can manage that, especially considering, Tennessee's got the best team ERA by 0.7 of a point, and Tech is the 228th best team in ERA nationally. So it's just the discrepancy is just massive. So it's hard to square up really what you can. Also, it's a crapshoot. The playoffs are crapshoots. Like it's half these games are coin flips because it's baseball, and there's a reason you play 60 games in the college season and 162 later on. So, I think all I'd say criteria for success. I'm gonna put beating Tennessee one time. That's where I'd want.
I think your prediction, I don't know if I'd say spot on, but totally reasonable and like totally feasible. All those affirming words in terms of the prediction validity. I think if we lose to Campbell in game one, maybe
Twitter's gonna freak out. Let's be clear. Twitter will freak out.
Like I don't want to say that like it would lead to the meltingest meltdown, but like this was a team where people are already upset about the whole extensions thing. Your mileage may vary. I'm not going to offer an opinion on that right now. Now's not the time. But actually, I probably already offered an opinion on that.
Definitely have, but different episode.
But you know what I mean? Like it's challenging to turn around to your fans, your alumni, your students, your players, even where the expectation was this team is extremely talented, host a regional. To go from that to you lost to the 3 seed in the team of destiny bracket that was going to be the odds are long, right? The odds are long to come out of this. And I hate saying that. Like, I don't want to go in to this weekend, which is up there with softball, March Madness weekend, like in terms of sports excitement and always stuff going on, like it's all happening. And like to go into that and go like, hey, you're facing one of the most unsung mid-majors led by their ace on Friday. And then if you win that, you are going to run into the buzzsaw of death that's been just like humming in Knoxville all season. That's a tough draw. That's a tough sell to the fans too.
I think it can be a tough draw, but it can also be, it's still an overall disappointment for the season, right? And I mean, we're on record, Jake, you and I, of saying this team should be hosting a regional. And they just, again, did not perform to that level this season. And we've discussed that to death today itself. I think success here, I think I'm with Jack in saying beating Tennessee once, I think is success. And I think that puts it in the same bracket, pun not intended, as Vandy last year, where I was like, you get Tech almost won that in extras, right? Like Tech almost won that regional final in extras. So if you get to the regional final and force Tennessee to really work to get to the supers and host the Knoxville Super Regional, I think that is my reluctant success criteria here. But I'm still overall displeased with the way this season has gone.
So I know we haven't talked that much about the ACC tournament, but now that we can kind of frame that week in the rearview mirror with also having the NCAA tournament field being announced, I would like to point out that yes, we have Aaron Fitt going on Packer and Durham tomorrow morning. We have Jacob Burke, Miami outfielder, Louisville's coach, Dan McDonnell. Why the heck are they wasting time on Packer and Durham with John Shire? On the ACC network, he coaches Duke basketball. He's never coached a game. It's the same problem I have with the RSNs having a bunch of games last week. Am I salty? Is that the reason that I could not watch? Yes. Was I also at work? Yes. But also, like, Miami spring game happened months ago. Just put the games on the TV network. Like, I don't.
It's ridiculous.
I don't priorities there. I don't.
It's completely ridiculous, but I have to think it has something to do with the broadcast contract that the RSNs are given at the beginning of their deals, right? Like, they get the ACC network group stage, and then they'll, like, the main networks get the knockout round games or what have you, and it's very
very different back when they signed those too, because the RSNs were far more accessible then than they are now. Like, that whole thing,
as always, Sinclair Broadcasting, hilariously
you can't get Bally anymore. Like, it's all like ACC network suddenly is the actual preferable option versus 5 years ago. That was a stretch for some folks before the massive cord cutting happened.
I was like, even then, ACC network wasn't really distributed on everything. Like,
no, it wasn't.
Podcast recently, right?
Yeah, no, this is the fact that we have that the wider breadth of ACC network. Big Ten doesn't do that well, I would say, and I never see Pac-12, but yeah,
Pac-12.
The Larry Scott Network is only available on your mother's, father's,
it's impossible to get.
Roku.
And last I could check, only in standard definition, but I may be making that up too.
That's still legal? I didn't even know you could still broadcast in standard definition.
That's a war crime in some states. We've talked about this tournament to death. I think we should move on. The last note I will put out there, and this is a free ad, I guess. Adidas has put the gold Georgia Tech jerseys on sale as a result of, or a side effect of Tech making the tournament. They're $80. They look pretty good. The only complaint that I have is it's gold numbers on a gold jersey.
I was gonna say, I will not ever buy this jersey surely because of that. However, this is a C- uniform.
However, I will say, because you are wearing it and don't have to read the numbers on the back, it's probably fine. So,
or just lose a foot race to Buzz, and they'll give you one for free.
Yeah, 7 years after the jersey has been worn. I remember this very specifically. Let's move on.
That's a great insert,
Great insert. Let's move on. Let's talk about Georgia Tech golf. They were last in action at the NCAA championship final. They were in stroke play last we saw them. Boy, they were dead last in the field for a while. They had a bad first couple of days, but they clawed back into the field to make the first cut into the final 15 or 16 teams today. However, the play today is just about over. I think the last couple of teams are making their way down 17, 18, and right around 14. Tech is in the clubhouse. They're done. They finished tied for 12th, at least right now. The cut line was at plus 33. That's where Texas Tech sits right now at eighth place in the clubhouse. Tech was at plus +51 on the weekend, +14 on the day. I'll give you one guess to guess who they tied with for 12th.
I already know this answer because I'm looking at the leaderboard, so I'll let Jake figure it
I
out.
haven't looked at all today, honestly. Is it Ole Miss?
No, Ole Miss is
No.
14th.
Darn. Well,
One more guess.
Stanford.
No, Stanford missed the cut. It is Ye Olde Athens Community College.
Oh,
They
God.
went +19 on the day, but they are also +51 on the weekend. Alphabetically,
Can't win the
technically.
tournament. There we go. Cheers.
Anyway, they got eliminated. Still happy day. We can move on from that. Speaking of the other guys, not Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech had a very bad weekend at the bottom of their lineup. Ross Steelman had a very bad weekend in general. I think he was +29 on the weekend. I think he was +15 before today. Ben Smith just had an awful Monday. He was +19 the last time I checked, today alone.
Judge, I went like +30 at Tough Holmes today. It was not good.
All right, so Ross Steelman +29 on the weekend, Ben Smith +24 on the weekend. It's been a rough go. I will point out specifically that I think, I can't actually read these scores, but yeah, not an ideal weekend for Tech. I will say they finished around where they were supposed to based on their coaches poll rank, right? Came in ranked 11th. They're finishing tied for 12th. I don't think many people are going to be too up in arms about that, especially considering that the top 8 teams right now are just a jumbled mess of the top 8 teams in the poll. So, yeah, we'll see how match play or their stroke play works out for the rest of the field. But obviously that is not going to include Georgia Tech, barring some sort of massive collapse in these last few holes from any of these top 8.
Yeah,
several of them. So, Jake, over to you. How do you feel about this finish? How does this contextualize Georgia Tech golf's season?
We've been ranked at like 11 for all spring. We were a little lower in the fall. So with that in mind, it's about what the powers that be, the rankings, all kind of consensus had us at. And so I'm thus at peace with it. Finishing 12th versus 10th versus 14th. Really, at the end of the day, you're just kind of pulling teeth there. So it's been a good year. Like, obviously it's tough because Tech golf is kind of, at least in the last 5 or 6 years, has always been that team. It's like, yes, they're in the mix. They could win it all. But like, at the end of the day, like, if you're not going to win it all, you can't really pass up a, top 15 season. They won 5, 6 events. It would have been 6. It was 5. It would have been 6. They won the ACC tournament. Tough loss there. I think I'd probably be a little bit more ringing in my endorsement if they had walked home with the trophy. But they can always saw the one that they shared with Oklahoma State in half and call it a day there.
Jack, what you got on this?
I mean, it feels like a lot. What I said last week is like, they're good enough to beat the best, but you never know. It could go the exact opposite direction, and it very much did go the exact opposite direction with a little bit of rebound at the end. The scores today were not great. Ben Smith was +19 on the day. He shot 10 over on the front 9 and then +9 on the back 9, including a 7 on a par 4, an 8 on a par 5, and a 9 on the second par 5. So just rough stuff. Not great. Forrester did shoot under par for the day, though. He did shoot 2 under, which without stuff like that, we're not beating Georgia. So
I got to give Bartlett credit here. He's tied for 15th overall in the individual field. So
he's doing great.
He's had a really, really good weekend. It's just, and he shot a 68 today. It's just a shame that, some inopportune performances from his teammates came here, and we're looking at 12th and not something a little bit higher.
Yeah. I mean, it was all in all, like, they played a solid year. They'll be back next year for the most part, and they'll be more experienced too, especially when it comes to something like ACC play. Maybe they'll have that memory to look back on and say, hey, like we've been here before. Honestly, I think my biggest like darn that's sad is I don't think golf is going back to Greyhawk next year, and it warmed my heart this year seeing that those Georgia Tech people on the 9th tee.
Oh yeah, that was cool.
There rooting for Georgia Tech golf. That like so wholesome. I love that. I think that's very special.
I wonder if they give money to the program. That is actually a legitimate wonder of mine, since they live on a golf course and have hosted Tech golf basically.
Yeah, you think there'd be something there.
That's a FOIA to file at some point, but
can't lean out the window and ask the team anymore. Big sad.
Womp. Any final notes before we move on here on Georgia Tech golf season, this tournament?
Only two guys have shot under par so far in this tournament individually. So it was not an easy weekend just as a whole.
It seems for Columbus too. So maybe it's how they had the holes cut, or where they lined up the pins or the tee boxes and whatnot, or maybe it's just they all got unlucky with the wind. But I feel like that was pretty true of Columbus too.
Just to wrap up, barring any sort of stupidity in the next hour or so, your top 8 in Scottsdale: Oklahoma, Vanderbilt, North Carolina, Texas, Oklahoma State, Pepperdine, Arizona State, and Texas Tech. 9th place is Arkansas, 10th place is Auburn and Florida. So very competitive field. The only, just to build off of what Jack was saying, the only team that is over par or under par today is Texas at -4. And everyone else is far over plus, like I think the lowest above par score is +4 on the day. So it's been a very tough course this weekend. Speaking of other courses, particularly the running variety, the NCAA East Prelims for track and field outdoor championships were this past weekend. I think that actually 2 weekends ago now. We had a couple of participants from Georgia Tech. John Watkins was on the triple jump. He posted a length of 13.6 meters, did not advance to the next round of 3 jumps. Taylor Grimes was in the 100-meter regionals. She qualified for quarterfinals with a time of 13:53. Nicole Fegans, who we've talked about much on this program, was in the 5K. She needed to make 5th to make a nationals appearance, and she placed 5th with a time of 15:56.61. She was about 10 seconds ahead of the 6th place competitor. She has advanced to national finals in what I will dub the Runner's Palace in Eugene, Oregon, mostly because I don't remember the actual name of the stadium. Other participants, Shanti Papacosta was at the high jump. She posted a personal record of 1.81 meters. She was seated at 1.79. That would be 21st in the East region. Carla Duplessis was also on the high jump. She cleared 1.71 meters, just under her seed length of 177, which would have been 30th in the East region. I've gone over the results. Mr. Grant, you seem to have a word to start us off on.
That green and silver affront to God is called Hayward Field.
That's right. I knew it. I knew it in the back somewhere in the recesses of my brain.
I also did, and I've said that name on the program many times, and I've also read the guy who paid for its freaking autobiography, and I still couldn't remember it. Anyway, Runner's Palace, still much funnier. Jake, since you had to get the last word in on what it was called, how did you feel about this prelim round for Tech?
Honestly, it shook out just about as expected. Tech struggles with having depth in a lot of ways, but they sent 4 through to NCAA East, and it's the same story as it has been for the last 5 years. And I think it's telling. I was sitting in church on Sunday, and a kid who's going to be a freshman at Tech comes up and he's like, Jake, you ever heard of Nicole Fegans? And I go, yes, she's really fast. He's like, dude, I run cross country. Like, I'm so excited. Like, she's going to be there representing. I'm like, my guy, I'm very sorry to tell you that Nicole has been here for a long time, and I don't think the NCAA is going to let her compete anymore, because that's what happens when you've been at a place for a long time. But I think that speaks to the testament of how she's raised the profile of women's cross country and women's track and field, and has done really well. And at the end of the day, she was the one that was seated in the top 12 in her event, and that's usually what gets you in the mix to go out to Eugene. And we've had a couple more entries in the past, but in terms of what we saw this year, I think I was a little surprised to see Olivia Moore not pole vault at all at East Prelims. But other than that, like, Taylor Grimes had a great year. Glad she got one last good race in Bloomington. John Watkins has been the standout on the men's side, so good to see him compete one more time. And then for whatever reason, Tech just had two really good high jumpers, and they had a fine weekend as well. Not okay, gosh, we have to find flights to Portland or Eugene or wherever, immediately. I guess
Would be a hell of a weekend though.
My goodness.
Find a ticket for one than for five, but I assume they send a coach too. I don't know why I just said one, but you know what I mean? Like, she's a great runner. That's what we kind of expected. And maybe she has one Tech record left in the tank before she goes. And the good news for us is it's going to be on ESPN. So we'll finally, be able to watch a track and field event live.
This is good. Good.
I have the seed times posted, but I have the seed times up. I want to give Jack an opportunity to comment on this before I read those out.
I did. Well, I was going to talk about the times actually, because I looked. Nicole ran a 15:56 in the 5K, and her best outdoor is a 15:37. So I don't know whether that was actually like what she had in the tank for that, or it's just like she just knew where the 5th, 6th cutoff line was, and then just worked that well to stay conserving energy.
Respect.
Yeah.
If it
yeah,
was
I mean,
allowed.
also 10 seconds. If he's 10 seconds ahead of 6, like, that's a clear demarcation of speed as well. So like I wouldn't put it past her to be like, okay, I know where I need to go. I know how I feel with this race. Just do the work, knock it out. So I'll be so excited to see her out there in Eugene. Man, y'all talk about going to Portland. Now I just want to actually go to this. I'm not going to, but that just sounds insanely fun. Knock out a couple breweries in Portland.
Go to a Timbers game.
All that, or Thorns game. Like there's a lot of good stuff out there.
I'd much rather go to the Thorns before I go to Timbers. I've never been to NWSL game.
Wow, fake Chicago Red Stars fan despite owning 4 jerseys.
I only own one Red Stars jersey, and it has the L sublimated on it. I'm much more of a train nerd than a women's soccer fan, and it was just a convenient excuse to, give my local team. Well, I guess they're not my local team anymore, but seeing as Atlanta doesn't have a local team, they can still be my team. That's fine. I'll own it. It's
technically on the rumored expansion list for 2024, but that's neither here nor there. Let me go to the seeded times for the women's 5K in Eugene, Oregon. Nicole Fegan's time from East Prelims puts her at the 15th seed with her 15:56.61. If you go back to her best time of 15:30, was it 15:37? You said,
yes.
That would put her right around the 8th overall seed, in between Mercy Shallingat at Alabama, who had a 15:36, and Amaris Tinsma. I think I misread these. Marley Starlipper, who's a freshman at NC State, who had 15:37.83.
Okay.
So
she ran this time in last year, like a year ago, was that 15:37. So her best she's ran a 15:53. She ran a 15:53 at ACC's, so 3 seconds faster earlier. And then, but the good thing in this though is that this is way faster than what she ran at the Tech Invitational. She ran a 16:02 and won at
won it at a jog.
Yeah, won at a jog. So like she hasn't needed to do the full Nicole, I think, is kind of the lesson here to take in right now. She's done 2 16:02s actually this year.
I have some very bad news for you.
Oh dear.
The top seeded athlete, Caitlin Tui, of NC State is at a 15:37.14. So that is a full 10 seconds faster than
15:37 or 27?
27.
Oh, okay.
That is a full 10 seconds faster than Nicole Fegan's best time. However, I think, like with baseball, anything can happen once you're at the race. We'll see what happens. It's a 24-woman field that probably gets whittled down to the final 8 after a couple quarterfinals. But we'll see what happens, and good luck to her as she goes to Eugene. Any final thoughts on track and field East prelims and basically the end of their season?
I don't think so.
I'm hearing silence from the peanut gallery, so we are going to move on. Last note: Nicole Fegan's 5K, as we said, that is a 7:25 scheduled start time on June 11th in Eugene, Oregon. It will be televised on ESPN, so mark your calendars for that one. We'll probably talk about it again next weekend. Let's move on to women's tennis, who is also at NCAA championships. This time in Urbana-Champaign, Illinois. Singles and doubles were in action. Let's go over the results. Singles round of 32, Emma Navarro defeated Carol Lee in 2 sets. However, the second set did go to a tiebreaker, so Carol really fought in this one. Doubles round of 32, Miyamoto and Rue from Oklahoma State defeated Lee and Sharbura from Tech in straight sets. Doubles round of 32, the unseeded Tech team of Ava Frostar and Kylie Bilchev defeated Briggs and Zine of Florida in straight sets. The first set did go to a tiebreaker. That allowed Frostar and Bilchev to advance to the round of 16, where they defeated Lanana and Krywo of Baylor. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, in 2 sets plus a tiebreak set. That's 1-6, 6-2, 15-13. So that went the distance. And then in the quarterfinals, Jen Brodus of Pepperdine and defeated Rostar Bilchev in straight sets 6-1, 6-1. So that's it for the women's side. A really good run here to the quarterfinals by Rostar and Bilchev. And a lot of fight shown in the other matches as well. Jack, you get the first word here. What do you think about this finish? How do you contextualize these finishes in terms of the overall season for Tech women's tennis?
Yeah, I remember we talked about how Lee was just kind of screwed running into Navarro.
Yes,
at the outset for singles. So I mean,
Navarro was the 1 overall seed in the singles bracket.
Navarro's going to be she's going to be. It'd be fun to watch her post UVA. So getting 10 games out of that, not bad, not a bad showing at all. I mean, you can lose a match by 4 games, but only lose the match by like 4 points at the same time.
Yep.
So I didn't look up, but she did lose the tiebreak 7-2. So I didn't watch this. So I don't know if she was up 2-0 and then got skunked after that or whatever. The Bilchev stuff was really cool to see though, because I was joking. Well, they could beat Bilchev, or was it Sharaber and Lee could beat Bilchev and Hrastar in the final if they got lucky. But then the more realistic situation flipped on its head there with our unranked going forward a little bit. Would have been they were in the same bracket as the eventual champs, who I'm forgetting who they were off the top of my head. So they would have.
The champs are important. They don't have Georgia Tech across their chest.
That's all right. You're right. I'm going to stop talking about that there. So, I would call. I mean, we've been talking about contextualizing it. What's success? This seems like success to me. We go to this tournament every year as well in some form or fashion, just because we're good enough. So I would, not going to knock us with that. Also, getting through a 5th set there, 15-13. Although I don't know if that's 15 points or game or
it's a tiebreak. It's a
tiebreaker.
So
okay.
Just points.
It's still long. That's still long for a tiebreak. Like that's nothing. That's nothing to fuss at.
Yeah,
so,
it's I think the official GT feed called it a marathon, and I mean that's 28 combined points. That's a while.
It's a long time.
That's a while for that one. I will say, just to reiterate, the Lee Sharbura pairing was seeded. They were the 4th seed, if I remember correctly. Hrastar Bilchev were not seeded. Hrastar Bilchev also had the fortuitous circumstance of avoiding Navarro's doubles pairing.
Yes, that's true.
The UVA doubles pairing, who I think was the first overall seed, or somewhere in there. And instead they faced Briggs Zine from Florida. So fortuitous, and it allowed them to advance all the way to the final 8. So, I'll take it. Getting beaten in the final 8 is no joke. Jake, over to you. How do you see this as in the bigger picture of this season for women's tennis?
Yeah, bigger picture is interesting. Just one thing I did realize writing YJR yesterday was just how interesting the seeding of the tennis is. So we can leave that lie. But in terms of the bigger picture, yes, is it disappointing that the 4 got upset pretty early? Yeah, I'd say so. But also, Lee had to play through a bunch of singles games. So in the grand scheme, as much as you want this team to just keep chugging from where they were at, I think an NCAA tournament berth, almost making it through to the round of 16, is just about as well as you can expect, for a team that lost, 9 total seasons of expertise off of its top 2 courts and its number 1 doubles pairing. I don't know. It's the kind of season I hope volleyball has next year. And I know that is a little bit scary to think because they were really, 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 really good last year. But just bounce back, stay respectable, make the tournament. That would be great. And I think that's fair. And I think that it does bode well for next year too. Sherbura, Bilchev, Lee all came really long ways this year. Roster, she's come a long way too. And I think there are parts that you can build around there. So I'm pretty excited, at least in terms of next year. I think they kind of landed right about as well as we could expect. And, there's no disappointment here, at least.
Mm-hmm. I think the only graduating senior from this team is Gia Cohen. And I think that was her 5th year of eligibility. So she's moving on, but I think we've been talking about it a lot this year. We talked about it a little last year too. This is a young team, right? Last year was other than their top 2 courts, it was a very young team, and now it's still younger, but it's now more experienced, especially in postseason play, right? If you're able to make these long runs when you're a freshman, like Bilchev is still a freshman. I think Frostar has 2 more years left of eligibility. If you're able to make these runs at this stage, then there's a lot of room to grow. And you might be able to see these players grow into those roles that we had so much talent in last year, right?
Yep.
Cool. Let's head over to the men's side, where Andres Martin was in action along with Marcus McDaniel as his doubles partner. Andres Martin fell in the second round to Arthur Ferry of Stanford. That is in a 6-3, 2-6, 6-3 matchup. That's all those scores are from Ferry's side. The Martin McDaniel doubles pairing faced off against Barkey and Segerman of Princeton. They lost in a tiebreak. I think I misread the scores here, but that was a 6-2 first set win for Barkey Segerman, 6-1 win for Martin McDaniel, and then that went to a 10-7 tiebreak that Barkey and Segerman won. So that is it for both of them. I think Martin made it to the round of 32. We talked about that as being a success for this year, and I think we'll get to talk about that a little bit. The only other note on Andres Martin, he has a wild card bid for the main draw of the Atlanta Open later this summer. So we'll be on the lookout for that. But Jake, I want to go to you first. Like I said, we talked last week and the week before about Martin finishing in the round of 32 or in the round of 16 in this tournament being a success for men's tennis program overall. Do you still agree with that? Or as that changed, are you still driving with that? What's the haps?
I think the thing where I kind of come down on the fence there is just that doubles didn't really make much hay with their draw, especially with how well regarded they were basically all year. These are two guys who won the ITA Southerns, both in singles and doubles, and went out to San Diego in the fall, had a nice little run. And I'd say it's tough. Honestly, more than anything else, I'd say it's just generally emblematic of their year. A team that really battled a long way. They had a lot of stuff just not go their way, and I think their trip to Champaign, their trip to Urbana, I don't know which of the two towns the Con Tennis Center is actually in.
Schrodinger's University of Illinois, of course.
There's a lot of corn, trust me, been there. But I don't know. I think I don't want to say it's a disappointing end to a disappointing year, but more of a tough or unfortunate end to just a unlucky year. I mean, the amount of close 4-3 decisions this team lost was it was shocking, honestly.
Yeah, it was a lot of close losses, a lot of heartbreaking losses. I have a piece to say, well, in terms of how I evaluate this, but Jack, I want to go over to you for your word on what you think of this in the context of this season for the men's program now.
This was, if anything, was going to be the sneaky, we might win a thing here with Andres. I mean, granted, he did have to go against, he would have had to go through at least three ranked people based on how the rest of that singles bracket panned out. So it wasn't going to be an easy one for sure. Matt, is Barton a fifth year senior or fourth year? Is he out after this? Is this the last time we got?
I will look at the chart while you keep talking.
Well, so if he's still stick around, this is great. Because this puts them in a similar situation as swimming was in this year in terms of like having the vets that were making NCAAs and doing really well for themselves and just kind of establishing just keeping some continuity in a sense of knowing what the young guys got. All right, what you got?
I have him listed as a redshirt sophomore, so potentially COVID sophomore.
So
I think
we're in
that's
great
3
shape.
years
Okay.
left.
They're younger than you'd think. I was going to say
Okay.
I would be redshirt junior, but I'm glad you checked that, Akshay.
Also,
Okay.
he's 6 foot and 169 pounds. That
Ooh,
boy's
muscle on this guy.
thin. That boy is thin.
That man needs to become friends with all the linebackers and just live with them for a week or two. When they get practicing again, get that boy to 200 with 10 more pounds of muscle.
Maybe not right now while he's playing good tennis, but yeah, eventually. That's a thin boy right there.
But that's great though. I mean, like, okay, so we've got a guy who definitely put up a fight against a ranked guy in the last 64 of the season and was the guy the whole year. Like, I mean, when I was writing for the technique, like it was like, all right, what did Andres do? Like, when we could touch tennis, it was make sure we knew what he was doing. So I think if anything, I want to see him be a bigger touch point the next couple of years on campus as like that. No, this is your tennis person. Like this is who we got over there at Ken Byers. Like you want to go make sure if you're on campus, go see one of his matches at least once.
I have something. I'm just looking at the roster probably for the second time this season. I'm just astounded at two things. Number one, how young this roster is, right? Out of the, 7 that rotated in and out this year, Chopra's a redshirt sophomore. Dong is a sophomore. Guerrero Melgar is a freshman. Martin, redshirt sophomore. McDaniel, redshirt sophomore. McKinney, redshirt sophomore. Shelcher, redshirt junior. So that entire roster is still going to be around next year.
Well, and
also,
we've talked about them just not like they've been due this year, but like they just haven't had a lot of juniors or seniors the last couple of years. And I think that's kind of what makes us feel like, man, this team should be farther along. They should be closer to that. But when you think about it, like Chopra, Martin, McDaniel, like that was all one recruiting class. And that's like 3 of their top 4 players. Like this whole team is aging up together. And I think that's what makes like it tougher to take a heartbreaking loss or something like that. There's not a senior who's been there and done it before. Like Martin is the guy. McDaniel is the guy. Like,
technically, Shelcher is 1 year older than all these guys, but 1 year does not a elder statesman make.
Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I wanted to know, some of these weights are truly funny because Keshav Chopra is listed at 6'1", 137. Chen Dong is a little bit more realistic, 5'6", 143. Melgar is also realistic, 5'11", 165. Talked about Martin. McDaniel was 6'0", 162. McKinney, 6'2", 169. Shelcher, 6'3", 176. But 6'1", 137 is that's a lot.
So this
Yeah.
is
Well, actually, technically, it's very
on
little.
the weights of student athletes. Nice. Love it for
Yeah,
them.
I don't want to make a generic comment. I'm sure Georgia Tech athletics is keeping them well fed. I'm just astounded by just the differences in athlete composition here.
The tennis. I mean, if you watch any pro, like put on some French Open, like they're all very lean people. Like they're meant to be flexible, and it's a mix of flexibility and endurance to get through matches like this. So
I'm legitimately looking up Rafael Nadal's. They don't have his weight listed on Wikipedia. He's 6'1", and there's no way he weighs more than 165.
187
Bull.
according to the ATP Tour website.
Woof. Okay.
Big match tomorrow. Nadal and Djokovic play at 3:45 in the French quarterfinals. Last year's version of that match was in my top 10 matches all time I had watched, and I've watched many of the Federer Djokovic, Nadal Djokovic matches. So they haven't really played much since that match, and no one likes Djokovic anymore. So it's always
for entirely valid reasons, but what have you?
One of the best heroes of tennis all time against arguably the greatest tennis player of all time, and at the same time one of the most hated players of all time now go at it. It's just, and Nadal's in like the place where Nadal has been more dominant than just about anybody outside of, like, I forgot who the women's golfer was who won everything for a decade, but that idea, you get the idea.
Yep.
Look, every sport needs a good heel, and Novak Djokovic has just fully melted into a heel role. And at a certain level, I respect it, but as always, you do not, in fact, have to hand it to him.
No, not at all.
Any final words on the tennis programs and their tournament bids?
They'll be back next year. That's my takeaway.
Yeah.
All right. I think that about does it for us this week. Any other final notes, comments, quips? Jake, you first.
Not really. I mean, it feels like it's been a long week, and we do have to appreciate sports while they're here. So go watch baseball this weekend, I say, with much vigor. But in all actuality, if you are around Atlanta, obviously the Atlanta Open is coming up, so keep that on your radar in terms of low-key college stuff over the summer. Otherwise, I guess go book some tickets to the Cape League or something like that up north, because it's the time has run out for watching Georgia Tech sports up until what? So probably volleyball will have an exhibition.
Technically, they're in Brazil still, I think.
Oh, I think they're long done with that.
Oh,
yeah.
That's a bad schedule or a bad posting thing on the Randall website.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. Like until mid-August, like you're gonna have to go find it somewhere. Like you got Knoxville, you got the Cape League, you got the Atlanta Open. Better hope
Pickings is slim.
Better hope everyone likes like Atlanta United and the Braves. Well, I would hope everyone likes those teams, but you know what I mean. Like we're about to be looking down summer, so take it while you can get it.
Well, don't ask me about my current opinions about those teams. Jack, anything else before we wrap up?
I got many opinions about those two teams as well. I was at Saturday's United match and promptly started paying attention to other things after 60 seconds of that match.
I think it was actually
they let it roll
seconds.
Like a minute into the game or something.
Not a minute.
Less than a minute into the game, and a right back, left back.
Wait, hold on. Akshay, refresh my mind. Wasn't it you that told me I should go spend a bunch of money to go watch that game? Wow.
I will say, the game got really hectic in its final
It
5
did.
to 8
Got a little
minutes.
crazy.
There
As
was
every home United game this season does.
there was an absurd bicycle kick, which both listeners and Jake should go find a YouTube clip of. It should be in the Atlanta United highlights from the game. Absurd. And then it just got really tense and very, very elevated in the stadium. It was kind of a cool environment. I haven't seen that in a while, but yeah,
it was interesting.
Frustrating day at the office overall. Yeah, that's about all I got. Mr. Grant, instead of looking for that highlight, why don't you take us home instead?
Yeah. So as you all know, this is Scions of the Southland. It is from the Rumble Seats podcast. You can find us wherever fine podcasts are distributed and downloaded. In terms of reaching out to us, you have Twitter at FTRS blog. You have the email. Yes, we have one of those, from the rumbleseat@gmail.com. Comment on this. Leave reviews. I don't know if we've ever gotten a review. That would be wonderful if you did, but we definitely want to hear from all of you in terms of summer content. You can expect us to talk about construction. You can expect us to talk about like pods and 3-5-5 scheduling and all that good stuff. And you can expect us to break down all the years that we just had and all the teams on Tech's beautiful, breezy campus. In terms of reaching out to us, I am at Jake Grant 98 on Twitter. We have Jack. He's at Jack Nicholas. Correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, I knew I looked that up before this. I didn't write it down though. This is great podcasting. And as always, like we said, at FTRS blog. So come find us, like, comment, subscribe. To borrow a bit from the Compound podcast, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe. It's all good. So thanks for tuning in.
Go to your elderly grandparents' phones or your elderly parents' phones and subscribe on there. Whenever you have to help them with tech support, subscribe on there. With that joke poorly received, we will see you next week.